Hi, Doug.
Hi,
How you doing?
I'm good. Hi,
Good.
Katie. I was in my other application. That's why
I
I
know.
heard you go.
I'm looking for my agenda and everything.
Oh yeah, I need to pull up the
That'll be helpful, right?
yeah, the demolition request.
Right.
I'll do that while
While we're waiting, I know. Where's that from? Looks like it was an email from January 6th.
Oh, okay, good.
There we go. Hey, Brendan. Hey, Mara.
Hey there.
Hey, sorry, I was having problems with my work computer not letting me in, and I was trying to
Oh, lovely.
not have to bring stuff upstairs to the council chambers. I've been running up and down the stairs.
Phew.
I had to restart my computer.
Get your workout in for today.
Are you at the office?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. We can't work from home. That's not a
Because of like privacy and security issues.
well, yeah, and there's no like all the files are here and people dropping stuff off, and yeah, there's no. We've been here this whole time.
Yeah.
But the only place to do I'm making sure I have everything up to share screens. Okay, good. I've got all my links up. I've got my PowerPoint up. I'm gonna
Tech savvy.
share the screen. Put up the
Oh, good.
slideshow from beginning. La.
Yay. Katie and I,
Very
before we started, we were searching for the demolition request and other things, so we don't need it. It's all up here. Okay.
Got the basics up here. Yeah, so I'm gonna.
Awesome.
I've got the agenda. And then when we get to it, yep.
Yep. Awesome.
And it looks like we've got 3 of you. So we just need 2 more in order to have our quorum.
Did people say
Who are
they
the
weren't
two
going to attend?
vacant-
Are we expecting people or?
I have one of our members who, Mike McClory, cannot make it tonight. And then Bill gave his notice. So we have an empty spot for where Bill was. And then we also had Faye had given her notice in the middle of the summer. So we actually have 2 openings, which we have advertised, and we have people interviewing before the council.
Good.
So
Well, that's
yeah,
great.
yeah, which is great. So, oh, there we go. We've got one more. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 4. We just need one more for our quorum.
Hey, Steve.
Hi,
Hello.
Steve.
How is everyone?
Good.
Good. How are
I'm
you?
amazing. Thank you for asking.
I'll have what you're having then.
It's mine. It's mine, all mine.
Not gonna give us your amazing?
I'll loan it to you.
Okay.
I'll text Ann right now and see if she's joining us.
Oh, there's one of the Anns. It would be good to have both of the Anns because we want to make sure to have
There's
minutes.
Ann.
Hey, sorry. My computer is doing like an update, so it's taking a long time. So I just joined on my phone. Hopefully I can figure this out.
No worries. I was having problems with my going between the computer in my office and the computer in the council chambers.
I was just about to text you, Ann. I was like, there's no way Ann's missing this.
No, I'm not. It's slow technology.
Karen, hi Karen.
Okay, so you have a quorum. I don't have the other Ann to take minutes. However, this does record, so we can always kind of pull it off and do some minutes from it as needed.
Okay, I can take some notes too, so we can
I can also,
things together.
yeah. And I know you guys aren't used to having a PowerPoint to walk us through, but I think it's going to help us just because
Yeah.
it's tough to get through these Zoom ones.
Right. Okay, should I kick us off?
You're good to go.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the January 12th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you all for being here. We will start off by taking roll. So,
Oh,
Katie.
Ann Kelly is coming on right now.
Oh, great. Do you want me to pause and wait for her?
Why don't you wait for her just a second?
Okay. With technology, I feel like we should always have like a 5-minute grace period,
Yeah.
For sure.
no matter what. Hi, Ian Kelly. You're muted.
Okay.
There you
Now
go.
muted. It looks like we've got the whole gang, right?
Yeah.
Except for Faye. I'll
So-
take a roll call in a second here. I promise, guys. But
So Ann, just as a reminder, Faye gave her notice and isn't serving any longer. And so did Bill.
I feel like we need to throw Bill a retirement party.
I know, I told him we'd have to throw a retirement party once we can all be in person.
Yeah,
He spent so many years. He was the longest serving member.
it's amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
So I see Ann locked up.
Bill did?
Yes.
I know. I'm locking. Okay, let me try to re-establish my connection here.
So Ann, I'm gonna have
Bill
Katie.
Stansel gave his notice.
Yeah. Ann, I'm gonna have
No.
Katie go ahead and
Okay.
take the roll and get us started.
Okay.
We can all kind of keep notes. Okay, so Katie Ortworth, present. Bill Stansel has stepped off. Ann Kelly,
Present.
Faye has stepped off. Mike McClory is absent. Ann Halvex
Here.
and Doug Stanley is here, and Brendan
Present.
is here, and Steve is here.
Here.
And Karen Alexander. Saw you out there, ma'am. There she is.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Mara Perry is present. Okay. So now that we've established our role, we'll kick off by approving the minutes from October 13th, 2020. If everybody wants to click the link, if you've got those in front of you or had a chance to review already, take a quick scan and please let us know if you see anything that needs edited or have any comments. And then following a review, I'll take a motion for approving the minutes from last meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
A motion by Ann. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
From Brendan. All those in favor? Everybody approves. Okay.
Aye.
All right. Next would be moving on to a public hearing, which we do not have today. And third, that will take us to visitor comments. And we do have a visitor on the agenda today, Mr. William Wickman. Is Mr. Wickman out there in virtual land?
Yeah,
I am indeed.
there you
Oh.
go.
Great, great. Well, I'd like to welcome Mr. Wickman to our meeting tonight. On behalf of the commission, we enjoyed reading, some of the background information on your project that Mara sent to us, especially because, in our last meeting in March, one of our primary goals for the year was going to be to, contribute and devote some more resources to the historic walks. I understand, Mr. Wickman, you've undertaken some exciting work around that too. So we're excited to hear what you have to say and, hopefully join forces and collaborate however we can. So, Mr. Wickman, if you want to take it away for us.
Okay, thank you. And it's nice to meet you all, kind of. This started, I guess, in October. My wife and I walk a lot. In October, I had remembered that there were Webster walks. And so we said, oh, why don't we do that? So we started taking them, and over a 6 or 7 week period, did all of them and loved it, loved the history. I love Webster and history, but thought, it's kind of tough to read the brochure as you're walking and you're never sure what house you're looking at. And I'm amazed how many Webster houses don't have good house numbers, which makes it more challenging. So I've done a lot of history projects, and I thought, this might really be fun to try to turn it into a venue, kind of what you all are doing, so that as you're walking, you can follow along with your smartphone and have a picture of the house and have recorded the historical blurb, but then hopefully have other tags to rabbit trails to other information, interesting information down the road. So I didn't really know where to go with that. So the brochures said the two instigators of these walks back early in 2000 were the Historical Society and the city. So I contacted the Historical Society and talked to Sean Green, and then eventually talked to their board about the idea, and they loved it. And then for the city, I talked to Mayor Welsh. We had been on a financial task force together, back before she was mayor, so I knew her pretty well. And she liked the idea, and she said, I might talk to the originators. So she got me in touch with Lee Falk and Kathy Wyrick, and they loved the idea as far as it wasn't changing the original intent. And then also I wanted to use some of the sketches that were available. So I talked to Marilyn Bradley, and she said, that would be great to use those. So that's where we are right now. So I had no idea really that you all were doing the same thing. So I've been pressing forward, I guess, for about 6 weeks and have a pretty good critical mass. And then when I talked to Mara the other day, and by the way, I'm not telling you anything new, but Mara is a great communicator. So when I talked to her and she said you were working on it, that we might have this conversation this evening and see if there's a way to collaborate and put the two systems together. So I love your mapping. That's really cool, the way that works. So, you know, if we could figure out a way to make it work for both, that would be nice. My big thing right now is I started taking pictures of the homes, and I don't know if you looked at the website at all, but I've got a pretty good critical mass on walk through the park and a few on the initial walks. I've stopped now because I was trying to avoid Halloween decorations and Christmas decorations, and so hopefully get back to the pictures in a few weeks. To emphasize the architecture of the houses. And then I started recording the blurbs too. So I didn't realize that you all had been working on that. So, you know, that is another whole issue. So I'm loving it. It's a fun project, and I love historical projects. It's a big project. I didn't realize there were 393 homes, but it, you know, I'm happy to do whatever I can to either continue with this, which is what the Historical Society wants me to do, or see if we can there's a way we can collaborate on the project.
So for the HPC members, I have on the shared screen, or for everybody who's watching, I have tabs open for both what Mr. Wickman has been working on, in case you wanted me to link through those, and I sent you guys the link to that. And then just as a reminder, we had just a test placeholder that we'd been working on, which would be one where we had placeholders of photos with the map, which is the app that can go on the computer, or sorry, on the phone. And I think that there are some wonderful ways where we could integrate them both. That if we use Mr. Wickman's photos, as he's working on that part of it, and even his audio, we could integrate it with this one, so that either if someone's doing a virtual from their home and not out there, or if they are there, this means you don't have to hold a map and hold your phone. So I think there's ways to integrate them both without duplicating efforts. And I think it'd be good to have both options, but wanted to throw those out there. And I have both of the items up on the screen for you to look at. And then I'm also going to add, I see Sean is on here from the Historical Society. So I'm just going to throw out and add others in case he has anything. So I'm here. In case there were any other questions, but let me know if you guys want me to switch back and forth on the screen to anything.
If you go on my site and click up at the top at the historical tours and go down to the most complete is the walk in the park tour, and you can really kind of get a feel of what I'm talking about. I don't know if you can go to that page or not. Looks like
I'm clicking on it right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So as you can see, he's got the photos, and then he has the audio linked. And we have the opportunity to do the same thing. We can actually replace out the photos we'd put as placeholders. And when you click on them, oops, we had a placeholder where you can actually on your phone, when you are walking through the tour, going from item to item, you would be able to replace out the photo there, and you could actually put the audio on there too. So it's not that he could continue with his process and we could just integrate a different version that could also be linked to it.
So I have a question. The Heart of Webster Walk, that one already has audio with it. Was that part of that was before this project, right? These are two separate.
Right. And I didn't realize that at all. I did find it, and I know Don Marsh did those. So that, you know, that could be plugged in where you've already got the audio. That could be plugged in to what I've already done. I did notice on some of them cut out before you get to the end of some of the audio. So I don't know, they'd probably have to be done over again. But yeah, if it's already done, my only suggestion would be those, all those audios, and I think there's 66 of them or something like that, 68. they're just numbered, and they really need to be saved by the address, because it's a nightmare getting all the right content with the right page. So it would be great if they were updated, and then I could plug them in really easily if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I think there is some tweaking that needs to be done to, I don't know, maybe 30% of them or something. But my thought, seeing your thing, is like, that's a pretty easy, that one's 75% of the way done now, if we just kind of combined them together and updated what needed to be updated. But I think this site looks awesome. I mean, my wife and I we kind of did the same thing you did when COVID started and everything shut down. We started just going through all the walks and doing all of them. And it's kind of hard to read as you'd stop out front of someone's house and be reading this. And so many people would just kind of look out their window at us like, what are these people doing staring at my house for 5 minutes? We're like, oh, just doing the walk, no big deal.
Right.
So it would be nice if you could kind of start the audio and keep walking. So I think this is awesome.
The history is really, I'm not telling you all anything, but the history is incredible. And if you scroll back up a little bit, Mara, to the top, I'm a history geek, so I love the rabbit trails. So for example, Harris Armstrong or Eames and Young, I want to go there now and say, oh boy, Eames and Young both lived on Selma and Webster. I want to know more about them, because they designed many of the buildings downtown during that era. So, there's a real opportunity to make it much more of a history project for anybody that's really interested in the next step. So, but if you're not interested, you just don't click on it. You don't move forward. So.
Well, can I just say, Mr. Wickman, thank you so much. I think all of us can say we really appreciate your passion. This is our passion too. I personally would love to see a connection between the Historical Society and us. So I really appreciate the work that you've done. This is, amazing. And you are correct that Mara is such a great communicator and she's awesome. So I think that this is a really good start to something that, we've been kind of conversing about in some of our meetings to figure out the best way to do this. And the fact that this is kind of a passion project for you, I think that's awesome. I know that Mara had mentioned some vacancies in our commission and you possibly filling one of those. So that would be awesome. So I hope that you consider this, but I really appreciate the work that you've done. This is really amazing. And yes, when you do the walks, you don't realize, I think, until you read about individual properties, how much amazing history to St. Louis there is in our community. So I think that, when you do realize that, it fuels you to want to learn more and want to figure out how can we expand this so that other people can see this and understand that this is here. So I really appreciate you doing this. I love it. I live on a street at the end of my street. I don't know if you've gotten to that walk yet. It's Northwest Webster, but we have a house that was built in the 1800s, and it was built by the first principal of the first African-American school west of the Mississippi. And to me, living next door to that house, that kind of fueled me to be like, what other history is here in Webster? So I love that you're discovering this and you're documenting this and you're trying to find ways to make this more accessible to people. And I hope that we can work with you and find a way to make this easier for people to be able to discover. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to press on, and then I'm sure we can figure out a way to make them both work. And it might be either or, but I think both and would be much more acceptable. If you look at, I've got another St. Louis history site, and I don't know if you had the link. It's lucasandgarrison.com. And that's where I really started this. And it's studying St. Louis at a particular era, but then seeing individuals that live in that era. it was in this, it comes from the maps, the Compton and Dry maps in 1875. And I was doing research on our church, which was in this area on plate 75, plate 71. And that there's 110 people living in that area on that map. So I started doing the research on each one of those. And Mara, if you go back up to the top again and hit the
Video.
just keep going to the menu.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you don't want to, the completed St. Louis profiles. And I'm sure some of these Webster people would end up the same way. So all of these guys that lived within 3 or 4 blocks of this area, they're fascinating histories. And you just keep going down rabbit trail after rabbit trail after rabbit trail. Hit one of them now and you can see the.
I'm going to do the one that says Perry.
All right, there you go. That's probably your great grandfather, right?
No.
But it's really, you know, St. Louis has such a wonderful history. And since so many people in Webster were, as you said, were part of St. Louis history, I'm sure there's information like this like crazy. Now you have to be a history geek or it's way too much information. But for history geeks, it really is, it's fun. And then takes you down other rabbit trails like, well, he was president of the Merchants Bank. So then you get a bunch of history on the Merchants Bank and all that that entailed. So again, I know I go way too far into this stuff, but it really does speak to the terrific history that Webster has back in that era. The video explains it, but it's too long for you all to watch right now. But
so I guess, I mean, there's a lot here. You know, you've already started this process, and I think we all agree what you've done is awesome. So what can we do? You know, how can we help as another resource to keep this thing moving along?
Well, thank you. If we can figure out the weak part, I think, of the brochures, which were done a while back, is the maps. They're pretty simplistic. If there'd be, I love, like your maps and the way that you can click onto the other stuff. So if we could figure out how to put the map that you have so much information about exactly where the house is. Sometimes it's hard to know from the map because it doesn't pinpoint the houses. Well, how far do I have to walk before I get to the other house? And I don't know what it looks like, and I don't see any street addresses. So the map would make, your map would make it very clear, okay, we need to walk about a block before we get to the next house. And then if we click and then goes to the pictures and the taped audio, you know, I'm fine with that. And then I think probably with what you're using, we could put the other links in too, to go to the other information if anybody's interested.
So the way our mapping program works, we basically do what we call a data dump, essentially, of all the photos into a location where they can be linked to our mapping program. We can also do a sort of a data dump of audio to a location that links. And then the way that it works out is you essentially just put it together in a spreadsheet. So if you have a title, you have the link to where the photo is located, you have any text that you want to put in there, any additional links you want to put, you just put them all into a spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet maps it for us. So okay. It's a pretty simplistic, it's almost like a template that our GIS data system has. And we already did this for restaurant maps in Webster Groves, and we talked about possibly using this for like an art walk. We can also map century homes, and I think we'll be talking about this a little bit later, but we also had created a map where we took essentially a spreadsheet, and we were able to map every single house that St. Louis County said property that was over 100 years old. And whatever data you want to have, you just put it in the spreadsheet. So whenever we click on these, if the spreadsheet has the owner and the year built and the residential square footage, but we wanted to put some more things, like we wanted to merge it with a century home list because we don't have one of those, we could do some merging. So there's a lot of applications to this. And I think if you if we gave you the place to upload the photos, the ones that you've done the watercolor over, we'd be able to link them up and be able to provide another, essentially, you could get to at the top of this, you could have a link saying, you know, would you like it with a map? And you could click on that and it would be able to link to all the other data that you already have. And any other links that you'd want to provide, we could put them in the mapping program too. So I think it's it would take some time, but it's not that difficult of a process because there's sort of like a formula to it.
Well, that certainly works for me. Like I say, I'm going to continue developing the content, and where we plug it would be fine. You know, though, and I'm glad Sean's on. I'm new to both the Historical Society and obviously to you all. There really needs to be a stronger liaison with bodies that have the same purpose and are working towards the same goals, so that, like, when I saw your Century Home map, it's like, oh my gosh, because one of my goals too is starting to do histories of century homes that aren't on the walks, because there's hundreds of them and they just didn't work out so that it worked on those paths. But they've got just as interesting histories as the houses that are on the walks. So those need to be incorporated too. So, you know, like I say, my greatest advantage right now is ignorance, because I don't know about any baggage between the city or the Historical Society from the past. So, you know, if I could help be a liaison between the two, I'd like to. Now, I have to say, I'm an alien right now. At this moment in time, we're living in Brentwood. We're getting ready to move back to Webster, but we're living in Brentwood. So I know I can't be on the Preservation Commission right now, but hopefully down the road, I'd love to be a part of that too.
While you were doing this, since you've already done so much of it, is there anything, I mean, obviously we've got, you know, a lot of content that can kind of be merged together, but is there missing, I guess maybe this will be better understood as we go further and understand what we already have, and as we, you know, work together to start moving. But when you were doing this, was there one specific piece? Maybe it was just simply collecting photos or recording the audio. Like, what was the most time consuming part? And maybe that's something we can, you know, divvy up, and each person takes whatever, a little chunk of it, just to help this not take so long. Is there anything that you can think of that would help in that way, or is it just kind of merging the data and see where we are?
Yeah, it's, you know, I'm taking the photos with a good iPhone and then converting them with Photoshop to the watercolor, which gives them a little bit more class. And then it's just the structure. I'm almost finished building the structure. So then it's just a question of plugging in the assets, which is pretty easy, you know, because I don't have to reformat everything as I go. It's just plugging it in. And like I said on the photographs, it's waiting till probably a little earlier in spring when things look a little bit better, or at least we've eliminated the Christmas decorations. So, and I'm, you know, I love the fact of divvying it up, except I'm really enjoying doing this. This is the kind of project I just love doing. So I'm happy to press on. I told Sean my goal is to have it done by the 1st of summer. And I think that's very doable.
We hope that you'll continue to keep us updated on your progress and any other ideas that you have, you know, as far as synergies and collaboration. And, you know, maybe our homework can be that we work on figuring out how we can collaborate and actually do it with you and with the Historical Society as well, whether that's a subcommittee or some sort of, you know, cross committee between the two groups. I know we used to have liaisons that, you know, dropped in on each other's meetings and tried to, you know, do shared activities and stuff. So we would love to see more of that happen as well. And, you know, that can be our homework to try and figure out how we can, you know, actually implement it between both groups.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been the president now for 4 months, and one of the things we've really kicked off into a myriad of activities. Digitization has always been a big thing for me, and it is a high priority thing that we're doing now. And creating liaisons with other organizations. Just so that everybody knows, the mayor is supposed to have a representative on our board of directors. So I was preparing to talk to Jerry about appointing somebody to be her person on our board of directors, our elections in May. Before that happens, or concurrent with that, we would be happy to add a liaison from your organization who can then sit in on our meetings and understand all of the things that we're doing. One of the things that we're doing right now is we've just worked out an arrangement with the St. Louis Genealogical Society, who is going to be digitizing. We have these City of Webster books that are from like the 1890s and in the early years. And they are going to digitize those, and they are going to also index them so that they are searchable. We also have like the old books from like Whole Camp Lumber and some of these other books. This is like really big stuff for genealogists, and it's kind of unique stuff that we hold on to, or have been holding on to, and nobody knows what information is in those books. So we are right now starting that project, and it kind of ties into all the work that you're doing right now. There's no reason why little bits and pieces of this information might not find its way into what you're doing. But you just need to be aware that we're kind of on a mission to do that, as well as digitizing all the photographs in our archive.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. That's, yeah, exciting stuff. And we love to hear firsthand about what you guys are doing. So that's really helpful to know.
Good.
Also, I know on Facebook, there are several groups around Webster, but there is one that's a Century Homeowners Facebook page. I know I'm friends with Becky Blair, and I know that she's on that page. But there, just anybody who lives in a Century home in Webster or who has recently purchased a Century home, a lot of people go to that page because we're all very passionate about this. And there's people who they don't have their Century plaque, and they're wondering, how do I go about getting that? How do I go about researching and finding the history of my house? So that is also something that maybe the Historical Society can become, somebody can join that group. It's just a lot of people looking for resources, a lot of people sharing their experiences about how they've researched their home, and people willing to help other people research their home. So that's also something else that you guys can kind of look into and find a lot of information about too.
So we have posted information there just so that everybody on the Historic Preservation Commission knows. We've had a couple of members who designed a guidebook on how to research your Century home. We digitized those pages, and they exist on our Facebook page. So if you go to Webster Grove's Historical Society, because they don't really have a good slot for PDFs, we had to do them as JPEGs, and we put them in the photo section. And I just recently posted something there. So go to photos, and you over on the right, it says see all. And right there, the blue cover. This is the book, and this was written, I guess, and published in the 1980s. So this is the guidebook that you can download the pages on how to research your home. I know that the form is on our website. And one of the things we'll need to address is internally for us is making sure that the form is probably in this folder, but also reconfiguring our website. So I think that certain things are easier to find. So we have this. Another thing that we're doing is we are about to announce an enhancement to this program. We've updated the plaques, and we plan to have a silhouette for every 25 years of a house over a century. So we'll have a 125 plaque, we'll have a 150 plaque, we'll have a 175 plaque going on up through the years. You know, some of these houses are closing in on 200 years old. And that kind of differentiates those houses from the ones that are just turning 100 years.
So Katie, knowing where we are and what we still have to get through on the agenda and the potential we might lose a quorum at some point, I don't know if you want to ask the group to make some motions or figure out some direction. If right now you just want to have us check back in the next month or 2 months with them, or sort of think about some of those things.
Yeah, I think I would ask that everybody kind of brainstorm over the next month, since this is all a lot of new, exciting information to us. If everybody could kind of brainstorm, maybe go back and look at the minutes from the meeting when we initially discussed doing the walks back in March, and then kind of think a little bit more about those synergies. And then maybe at our next meeting, we can really dig into, you know, what type of committee could be appropriate, or what type of you know, actions we could suggest to help each other to integrate our groups, and then, you know, invite our guests back and talk through. Does that all sound good to everybody? Any other thoughts or ideas?
Well, as I said, if you want to consider sending a liaison to our meetings, you can talk, you know, internally about that. And I'm not exactly sure who I should communicate with, but I will get clearance from our executive committee for that. And then somebody can start attending our meetings and hearing all of the, you know, the projects that we're working on.
That'd be great. Sean, do you mind sending that information to Mara so she can distribute it to us in the most sunshine law appropriate manner?
No problem.
Thank you. So then I don't think we need to make any motions at this time, do we? Good. Okay. Any parting comments from our guests or anybody else before we have to move on to other official business?
Just thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
We're glad you could both join us. Thank you so much. And nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And Mara, I have to say, I really love you sharing your screen.
It's kind of fun, isn't it?
Really nice. Yeah. It's cool to have an interactive meeting like this. Do I need to close out visitor comments or anything, or just say now we'll move on to new business?
Yep.
Okay.
So just as a reminder, next item on the agenda, yes, new business.
Okay. So we have a demolition recommendation to consider at 818 Providence Avenue. If everybody wants to click on that link.
I went ahead and put the staff recommendations in these bullet points, and then the final recommendation. And then I did take a quick, it's not from the packet, but just a street view photo of the house to put on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Why don't I go ahead and read through the memo really quick to kind of get us kicked off, and then we can all kind of re-review the information and discuss. So staff has reviewed the request for demolition of the single family dwelling at 818 Providence. The following has been addressed. The single family dwelling was built in 1959. The city found no records pertaining to an inventory sheet. The property has not been previously identified as an at-risk property that we've looked at for possible designation. It is a one-story frame bungalow, approximately 950 square feet. The applicant has submitted a written statement with photographs identifying claims of impairments in the existing dwelling, including mold in the basement. According to public records, property was purchased in October of 20 for $150,000. The intent is to demolish the existing structure for construction of a new single-family dwelling. Staff recommends approval of the request to demolish the existing single-family structure without holding the request for additional review. So we can kind of scroll through our packet here, and we see the homeowner's request. Photographs.
Does anyone have any questions for staff?
One seemed pretty straightforward to me.
And do note, because we are addressing this right now, we are currently with the Plan Commission trying to address the fact that we're getting a lot of demolition requests for smaller homes. And we're trying to address that because we feel that it's important. We don't have anything to stop that right now, but that it's important to look at the loss that we're getting of some of our smaller sized homes, which is changing the diversity of housing types that we have, because we're getting less and less smaller size homes. And most of them are being replaced with homes that are 2,800 to 3,000 or more square feet. So for those that haven't seen it, we do have ongoing public hearings with the Plan Commission. And we're addressing both this as well as the option of 2-family structures within our A4 7,500 square foot district to help provide for different types and sizes of houses within the community. So just know, I know you guys have been seeing a lot of these demolition requests, and when it doesn't have a very specific historic, bent to it, we are going ahead and recommending demolition, but we're hoping that this new code section that we're working on might, help with maybe decreasing the number of losses that we're getting to existing structures within the community.
I think just as a discussion piece, I agree with, you don't want to just because it doesn't have historical significance, that alone is not a reason to approve the demolition. But for me, I would rather, based off the condition of this house, I can't imagine somebody is going to go in and renovate it in that same, or, fix it to that same structure, spending 150 for the home and then another 100 to, remediate all the mold and all that stuff. So that's my 2 cents on this one, but I agree it should be a deeper look than just, does it have historical significance or not? Because there's a bigger ripple effect to that than just saying, all right, no historical, let it be, approve it. But this one I think was in pretty rough shape.
I think that's a really good point though, Brennan. Does anybody else have any concerns or questions they want to pose to the group before we make do we make a motion for this? Yeah.
We need to go discuss the criteria or no, Mara?
No, I mean, there isn't as much specific criteria. It's not this isn't a public hearing.
I move we approve the demolition request.
Second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Sounds like we're unanimous.
So before we move on to the next, I know that there is a chance that Katie might have to leave a little earlier. And so if we start running out of time, we'll still have a quorum, but we won't have a chairperson. And our vice chair was Bill Stansel. So I think it might be a good moment where if you all want to talk a little bit about a potential vice chair from among the members that we have, so that should Katie need to leave, we have someone who can finish the rest of the meeting. And then also just should in a future meeting, Katie not be available, it's important for us to have a vice chair. So I don't know if you all want to talk amongst yourselves or nominate someone and take a quick vote so that we do have a vice chair available in case she needs to skedaddle.
I think Ann Hawbucks would be a good vice chair. Did I say your last name correctly? I'm sorry, I didn't. I think that
You did. No, you did. You got it.
I was gonna say
her
the same
interest
thing.
level and her involvement and just general, always being present would make an excellent choice.
I'm trying. I mean, I do have a toddler. So. But
Doug, I agree. I was gonna nominate the same person.
I beat you to it.
I mean, I will gladly accept that. I might need a little refresher on what that all entails, but I'm committed. I'm gonna be here for meetings, so I'm happy to help out.
That would be great.
If there's ever an issue and you need to remember like what our procedures are or anything like that, you can always ask.
Okay. But no, I'm happy to accept that. So
should we make a motion to approve Anne as the vice chair?
I will make the motion.
Did Steve make the motion?
Yes,
Sorry.
I did. Sorry.
Okay.
Made the motion.
Steve.
We have a second.
I'll second that.
Brendan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Congratulations, Anne.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for serving and contributing, and thank you everybody for hanging in there through all of this. It's tough.
Thank you, everybody.
Time and commitment. It's really great.
So if you want to move back onto our old business, I did create a couple slides. I know this had been dragging out for a number of months because it was just so difficult for us to be meeting virtually. We're learning that having a PowerPoint and something on the screen really does seem to help us to move along and kind of talk about ideas. I did not have a chance to send this out ahead of time, which I will try to do for future meetings. And I had a couple people get me information, still wasn't a big swath of information, but I wanted to kind of walk you through what we've been talking about. We've been talking about both at-risk properties as well as that 100-year list. So I have a couple slides on both, and I'm thinking I'm just going to flip through them quickly, and then you guys can see how you want to talk about them. So the first thing that I did is I created some slides about sort of a reasoning, like what is your reason to potentially add something to an at-risk list? And I put a few of the things that people had sent to me of some of the reasonings that you might want to put together as why you would want to put a particular property on an at-risk list. Then I put together what are some of the determinations that you could make? Condition, whether there's certain damage, whether it's compliant for occupancy. I know that at least one person had sent me some stuff that related to the people themselves that live there. And I think we've got to make sure we're legally not crossing over a line regarding that. So we'll have to talk a little bit about that. Then I think a couple people had said to me, hey, I really like I'd sent a number of examples of some types of other communities that had done at-risk lists. And it seemed like everybody was leaning towards the Chicago list because it had different ratings and different colors. So like a red, yellow, green. I went ahead and copied what Chicago has for their red, orange, yellow, green, purple, and blue. Way more complex than I think we need to do, because obviously Chicago is a very different community from us, but it might be something that we could kind of steal and work off of. And then going back to the idea of how we would tie this at-risk piece with this mapping that we've been talking about with the 100-year-old property list. They're kind of tied pretty closely together. So a couple things that we need to do. This is kind of what the map looks like when we pull it up, and I can always go back to the interactive screen if we need to. But I did some screen grabs. So right now, all those little orange dots are anything that, according to St. Louis County, is more than 100 years old as of last year. Then when you get deeper into it, you can go down to the block level and you can click on them. And we had kind of simplified down just the fields we needed. And those fields included things like the locator number, the owner, and that would be just the owner. That's not been updated. So if it's changed hands recently, that's not current. The address number and address, if there's an owner from that lives somewhere else, or their property bills go somewhere else, what subdivision it's in, and then the year built. Right now the system is automatically putting a comma in, so we've got to fix that. So I wrote fix the year number to remove the comma. We have an option of adding another column to integrate the Century Homes. And while we were sitting here, my email popped up, and I think they were sending over a spreadsheet to me of the Century Homes. So that's awesome. And then we could potentially create a place for the at-risk categories here. So we could start putting the colors or other things like that. And we talked about this being something where we could get various volunteers or focus on different blocks and try to have people start documenting. And this could be an ongoing running project, which again, I think could tie nicely with the Historical Society if they are wanting to continue to focus on potential of, sending mailings out to people who have new century homes or ones that are now at 150 years. There's a lot of, I think, applications. So I just threw these couple slides out so that we could have some things to talk about. Again, I know it's a little, timing is rough. There's a certain point where by the end of the day, you guys don't want to be on Zoom much anymore. So I'll throw it out there and you guys can decide how you want to move forward and what you want to do next.
Well, I will say I was a little confused because I know we're looking at defining at-risk properties, and then we're also talking about, walking through the neighborhood and identifying properties that we might think are at risk. So I was a little confused, I think, last month when we kind of brought this up. And honestly, aside from work, we haven't really been going anywhere. So I can say that driving around my area of Webster, I've been looking at both properties that I feel like I'm going to identify as at risk. And I've at the same time been asking myself, why do I think they are at risk? So I feel like it's kind of a hand in hand thing. So I guess I'm confused as far as do we start making a list of physical properties in Webster that we identify as possible at-risk properties, or do we focus on the list of what makes a property at risk? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think when it comes down to the legalities, you probably need to have a why is it at risk first, and really make sure that the entire commission agrees on that. When I looked back over the last number of years before I was helping out with the commission, there have been various lists, but there's never been something that says why something was on the list. And I think it's really important if you're going to create an at-risk list that there is an understanding as to, you know, if there's just one factor on the list, is that enough to have it on the list? Is it possibly that you say it needs to be a couple of these items on the list? Because just because it's vacant doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely at risk. You know, you even all approved a house last year before, and I hadn't had time to pull everything up for you, but you had approved one to be demolished, and it had been vacant. It was one of the worst ones we had seen, and someone ended up not demolishing it and renovated it, and it has now resold. So I think there's still these opportunities that if you know, just because, and these are just bullets that other people gave me, I don't necessarily agree with them, but just because something is adjacent to something that's at risk might not be the only factor. It might have to be 2 or 3 things that need to be important to address.
And I guess, so there's, in Northwest Webster, there's 2 properties. One is actually on a historical street. And I think I've talked about it. It's on Marshall and Elm. That's been roped off for a while. I think it was bought by flippers and then sold to another flipper. And there's legalities involved in that. But then there's another side street off of Elm. And there's another house that on my list, it would be, in my opinion, considered at risk. And I guess looking at the 2, I feel like one of the common denominators between both of them is a lot of overgrown brush. And, you know, just there's a lot of trees and weeds and shrubbery and everything that's like kind of overtaking the house. And so in my mind, okay, that's kind of a factor that's making these 2 specific properties at risk, in my opinion. So I guess, how do we decide that as a factor on our, this is what makes a property at risk? You know, just because I see it and I see 2 properties and I feel like they both have kind of the same thing, does that make it an issue, make it, you know, a reason to be at risk? Or is that just my opinion? I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
I think what you said, you know, Mara, was, you know, it's not one factor. So I think we all, hopefully everybody else, you know, hopefully all of us sent in kind of our list of what we feel like makes a property at risk. And I think, in my eyes, there's 3 steps to this process. It's 1, we all compile this list, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in different thresholds, but it's, if it meets any of this criteria, it potentially could be an at-risk property. That could be overgrown, it could be deteriorated siding, it could, whatever it may be, these visual aspects, maybe some history behind it, whatever it may be. Okay, this means that it's at risk. That's step 1. Step 2 is that color-coded list, or a 1, 2, 3, or, you know, red, yellow, green. Okay, based off these 20 things, if it meets 5 of these, it falls under orange. If it meets 10, it's in the, or however we decide that. Then we decide how at risk essentially it is. Or again, I like Chicago. I had mentioned when we sent you in the emails, that's kind of the one I was going off of also. Is I think we could go break it down to 3 different, you know, factors for now. We don't need as many as they have, but that's step 2. You know, we figure out all these factors, then we figure out a rating system, and then step 3 is, okay, we have this knowledge of how to look for these, what makes it at risk, how at risk is it. Then we go out and look at them, and then we determine, okay, then what? But I feel like we still need to understand, to Ann's point, what is even at risk mean? You know, what are these factors we should be looking for? You know, how do we look for them? I think we're still at page 1, and that's where we really mentally need to stay until we can have some things we all agree upon, and then we go to the next step.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that, Ann and Brendan. I was kind of thinking kind of along the lines of how we review everything else, like first looking at a property, like, is it within our purview? Is it historic? Does it relate to our mission, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to preserve, what we're trying to, protect for the future? So be it age or district or a historical event or architectural feature, does it bring it within our historic purview? And then from there, kind of looking at what's our definition of at risk, and does it move on, into that next bucket of risk being, abandoned, vacant, open to the elements, some of these other physical qualities on the list, and maybe there's some sort of, tiered approach that we can use to check off whether it meets all those, threshold qualifications. And then I guess from there, we have to decide what we do with at-risk properties.
Is there like a maybe, based off all those emails you got, is there something that, I don't know how much you got from the group, but is there something that can be compiled that we can share and we can all kind of, I'm thinking about this like in my job of deciding a name or something, we all kind of share the 50 names we came up with and rate our top 5, and then we collectively pick from there. Is that something that would help this group, is if we passed out the list of at-risk, quote unquote at-risk items to look for, and we all said, yeah, these 10 absolutely, these 10 50-50, it could make sense, it might not, it's kind of, maybe that's a secondary piece to look for. I don't know, would something like that help? Do we have enough to do that?
So everything that I had is in this PowerPoint. So I really only got comments from 3 people. And of those, there wasn't, I think because it was kind of unclear where you were going, everyone's submittal to me was completely different from one another. So that's why I figured if I started with this, and maybe you took a couple of these slides and everybody looked at this first slide and said, nope, and I wrote off to the side, additional reasons or other factors. So I think if you took this, and I could give it to you in a Word document, and everyone looked at these and either agreed or added text to them or did something with them. Same thing with this next determination of risk. And then maybe seeing if you wanted to edit or look at a way to maybe simplify these down from Chicago into 3 categories. If that could be the next sort of step, because I wish I had a little more to work with. But again, I think it was difficult for us to be doing this a lot just via email. And I know we just didn't have the time to really understand what I was trying to get out of everybody, so that you could move forward.
Well, and I think I personally, I kind of was putting the horse before the cart, and I've been noting properties that I see that I know are century properties that, in my opinion, are at risk. So I've been noting them down, but we haven't discussed what actually makes a property at risk. So it's kind of like.
But the nice thing is you can take those properties and sort of say, well, what drew me to them to think that they were at risk, and make sure that those are in the reasons. And right now, this reason list is pretty small. I just tried to throw a few things together from what I had been sent. So I don't think you're that far off. And to make you feel better, the property at Elm and Marshall finally has a permit for it to be renovated so that it is in a National Register Historic District and that it does not get demolished.
Yay!
Yes, it's taken us months and months.
I know, yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah, permit has been issued.
Good.
I would say, I think that there has to be some sort of, and I think Brent was touching upon this. I think everyone has been in terms of the color system or tiered system. There has to be some sort of mathematical or systematic approach to it where it's a checklist. You know, I mean, okay, you know, these are the things that we evaluate. We've checked these boxes, and now we evaluate the level to which, you know, if we're looking at siding, okay, yeah, we've loose siding, but is it, you know, red, green, yellow? But just in terms of transparency, I mean, should anything, you know, come before, you know, how did you evaluate this? Was this arbitrary? I mean, to have some sort of checklist makes it seem like it's more of a, you know, systematic approach, that it's not just, you know, each person's opinion, you know, like, you know, I don't know, I feel like that sort of helps direct the path, you know, where it needs to go to the next step, just so, you know, we can figure out whether or not we've, you know, checked all the boxes, literally.
This question may not really apply here, but I've just kind of wondered, what when the staff is looking at demolition and they recommend approval for demolition, is there a checklist that staff looks at, or is it just a case by case, kind of like we do? We use our own judgment, or is there some type of list that you know, use as a general guideline?
So we took, when we all as a commission rewrote that code section that was supposed to look at anything that was over 50 years, which was a new thing. We did create a small checklist of items that were important if it was over 50 years old and not going for a certificate of appropriateness. So we do use that checklist essentially. And that's why, so when Danny does his review, and Danny reviews it and then I cross-check it. But when he does his review, these are kind of the key items that we review. Because since it's not a national register, it's not in a historic district, we just look to see if there's something else important that we might have missed, in case it's something that probably could have been nominated, because that would be your next step, would be to nominate. So we do look at the actual age of the dwelling, whether we have an inventory sheet, because we have that for some structures that aren't in historic districts. So they've already been documented. We check to see if it's identified at risk. I mean, we have older lists that don't really have any documentation. We look at the overall architectural type and size. We look at whether there are problems with the particular property. And then we do look at the records of like, what did it sell for? And, you know, some things related to that. So it's what's in the code is what we've been using.
Would anything on that list help us for this process, or is it more of it's already too far down the line? Yeah, I'm just trying to think, if we, you know, we don't have a huge list right now to go off of, so I'm trying to think of resources that have already been, you know, qualified that we may be able to pull from, or at least help us build our list.
I think that if we were able to take the historic inventory sheets and like in the same way that we've done the mapping for the 100-year-old, if there was a way to take that spreadsheet and create a new column and have someone go through our handwritten book, and demarcate which ones already have historic inventory sheets. That would be a great thing to show that there might be some additional information. If someone was able to take some of the other, I know there's other books or documents that might have information that aren't currently in a historic in a historic district. I think there's a few ways that we could have, if someone wanted to volunteer from the group to kind of pull some of that together and put it into our spreadsheet, we'd be able to probably use that in here. So, I mean, right now we don't have, when we go to the map, I'm going to go back to the map for a second. When we go back to the mapping, so right now the documentation is pretty basic, but if we were able to update the spreadsheet and create a new column for This is already in a historic district. This has an inventory sheet. There might be a few other key factors that we could add to here, and we could actually start a color code on the map. So there might be a way to, you know, pretty quickly identify, oh, all the ones that are already in a historic district and are occupied and we've driven by and they look in pretty good condition, we could make them all green, you know, or something like that, that they're all good to go and they're not at risk. And I might be reversing the colors, but either way. And there might be a way to kind of pull this together, and it might be a piecemeal. It's not going to be an immediate, you know, it might be that one area of the city gets identified and the others don't get yet, just because of our resources. But I think there might be some opportunities to do things like that. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
I think also I was just looking through the code when Brendan brought up the point of, is there something that already exists that we can, you know, kind of look to or utilize? And as we're talking about the at-risk properties, I think all of this kind of developed because every time we go to review a certificate of appropriateness for a demolition, you know, we talk through the elements of what that approval looks like. And, you know, the big one we always get really sad about is the one that says evidence of deterioration due to willful neglect of routine maintenance and or commencement of demolition by intentional or reckless disregard of the city's requirement for a certificate of appropriateness. And it might just be that that built-in definition is all that we need to, you know, put the asterisk next to that colored dot on the map that, okay, yeah, here's one that, you know, if this came up in front of us, this, we would get to this element of the certificate of appropriateness and we'd be like, oh my gosh, we could have, if only we could have done something, you know, to save this one was at risk. And that's kind of exactly what we're hoping to fix. So maybe that definition can kind of be what guides us, at least as a starting point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when I was asking that. Is I like what you were saying, already taking that and using it to color code, but you kind of clarified what I was thinking was this list has already been generated and maybe it's not 100% of what we need, but there's, you know, it's already been qualified and it's been used and validated.
So I guess my question is, between now and our next meeting, if this is something that we're focusing on, Mara, what do you need from all of us? Because like I said, I've been kind of keeping track of a couple properties that personally I think are at risk. And I haven't really sent those to you because I didn't know if that's too soon, because I knew we were working on what defines at risk. So I guess like where do we go from here before our next meeting?
Ideally, I think I'd like to send all of these three slides to everyone and have people give us feedback. Other, you know, factors to add, whether it's making, you know, adding things that are already in the code, and then going to the next sheet of, you know, and maybe some of this again comes from the existing code, determination of risk. You know, have they started, was there a fire? We've had a couple of those. Is there a current overall structural condition or problem? And what, you know, anything else you might add to this. And then I'd really love for people to kind of take a look and go, hey, can we kind of steal from Chicago and morph our own red, yellow, green? You know, that would be something that probably isn't at risk. Now they have the green as properties are pre-1940s, exteriors have been slightly altered. Well, green rated properties are slightly altered. They're also buildings that might be, so it kind of talks about, I think they actually have like currently safe properties aren't even on their map. And I think maybe we want to have our properties that are in good condition on the map. So maybe there is a red, orange, yellow, and then anything that seems to be like really looking good and is not at risk would be green. But yeah, getting feedback on those 3 slides would actually be the ideal. And then it could not hurt to go ahead and start throwing together a list of here's the ones we think are at risk right now. Because I think it is kind of a chicken or egg situation. It's a difficult one because it's one of those where if someone else looks at it and you say, oh, I thought this one was at risk, and they say, well, I see this this factor and this factor, but should it really be in that category yet? Is it more of an orange, whatever that is? And that might help you confirm that your red, orange, and yellow works. So I think sending examples would be awesome too.
And with
sort of-
this, oh, sorry, Ann.
Oh, no,
with
that's
that,
okay. I'm cutting out, but has anyone seen the property on Bompart, in the 400 block of Bompart?
Wait, you're muted.
I couldn't tell if I was cutting out or not. Has anyone seen that property? Just mentioned, as Mara says, examples that the property on Bompart.
I know which one you're talking about. The
Yes.
woman was put in
The garage was just
this.
Yes.
The city demolished the garage. The woman was put in a nursing
garage?
home last
Okay.
fall or the fall before last fall.
Okay.
And there are currently no family members that have power of attorney. There's some issues with the key. We're working with that particular one, but we're pretty limited right now. But the city did go on and demolish the collapsing garage. And we have
I saw that.
We have some contact information, but the woman is in a nursing home, and the only family member that has power of attorney refuses to talk to any other family members, and has actually taken the key to the house.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just on a tangent, and that feeds into one of the other things that we brought up is when you have an elder care issue,
Sorry, Ann, you cut out at the end and I didn't know if there was a question.
No, there wasn't. I'm sorry. Just ignore me. My connection is not.
Okay, so my question though about us compiling our criteria for at-risk properties. Let's say that we do compile a solid list where we're all in agreement, we have a system, everything like that. Where do we go from there? Is that something that is brought to city council's attention? Is this something like, I guess just like, we get this list, we get the criteria, then what happens?
So I think it depends on, in the past, it's simply been essentially like a project, like any other project that you all have done. So in the past, it's just been a project that there was an at-risk list. That list then helped make a determination on whether you wanted to, as a future project, nominate a particular structure or create a new historic district. So I think if you're able to see the mapping, that might actually help you make some determinations on whether there might be some other districts that are very logical, that might fall nicely with large numbers of houses over 100 years old. I think there's a lot of options of things that you can do with this list. It doesn't necessarily have to go to council at this point. This is really just, we're not making a code change right now. Okay. We are simply like, you all in the past have picked a couple projects for the year. And then depending on how long those have taken, either extended them out to a future year or done something different. So this could be something that you say, oh, we need some funding for this, and we now want to send mailings out to all these at-risk properties and see if we can get in contact with people, or, oh, we want to spend some money and create a new historic district. I think there's a lot of things you can think about.
Yeah, I think there's also, you know, an important part of our kind of our mission that we haven't necessarily tapped into before, as far as like, you know, we can testify before boards and commissions, including the city council, on matters that, you know, affect the historic, cultural, significant, you know, property, structures, sites. So we can, you know, really, we could use our information, and armed with that to, you know, present things to the city council, to the mayor, to make recommendations based on the information we've found and the maps that we've compiled, and really make it worthwhile and get, you know, our information out there. There's a lot of other, you know, kind of powers and duties we've been tasked with that I think we can tap into here. Right, make recommendations to city council concerning appropriations. A lot of ways this could be useful that maybe we're not, you know, not thinking about.
I agree, Katie. We could be like the keepers of the master list, you know, I mean, that they consult, you know, it's like, oh gosh, this, that, or the other property anyway. I mean, that it's a, to first have the information is the first step in doing anything with it, you know, I mean, so, and the work, you know, the groundwork that we put in compiling it, definitely, and keeping it up to date, as, you know, in the past, we've had some lists before, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, it seems like something that we're all really passionate about and interested in. So I think we should continue pursuing it, maybe review the materials that Mara might send out to us between now and the next meeting. And then maybe by the next meeting, be able to, you know, kind of vote on our core qualifications for at-risk properties, and then be able to go from there. That sound good to everybody? Okay. If there are any other questions or comments, should we look back to our other business?
So actually, there is nothing else.
Oh. All right then. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or anything before we conclude? Next meeting is Tuesday, February 9th.
And so just a couple quick things. One, for those that had not seen or noticed, our new city manager started yesterday, Dr. Marie Peoples, and we're super excited that she started. Hopefully when we're back in person, you'll get to meet her. And so that's one bit of information. The second one is, if anyone is interested in attending any of our Plan Commission meetings, our next Plan Commission meeting is Monday, February 1st. We are going to continue our conversations on single-family residential, updating the two-family residential, because right now our A4 residential zoning allows two-family, but really only on like 3 or 4 blocks in the entire city. So we're expanding that so that if we do lose a 900 square foot house, the potential could be that you could put in a two-family structure and be able to have 2 smaller, you know, units that would make up for the loss that we had, and continue to provide all types of housing in different forms to keep the diversity of our community and the diversity of the housing stock. So that is coming up. It's going to be Zoom. And I believe we're going to probably stay with Zoom at least for the next few months, if not a little bit more. And I hope we can continue to provide things like a PowerPoint to maybe make it a little easier for us to move forward with items. I think that's it, unless anyone had any questions about anything else going on. We're all super busy here. We did not slow down with construction. And lots of new houses, lots of new construction, lots of new businesses. You would think that we had not been closed down last year.
And we have 2 vacancies, right, on the HPC?
We do have 2 vacancies, and I do know that at least one person is interviewing, maybe 2. My understanding is that there's someone interviewing at the next council meeting who is interested in Arts Commission, but they do have a background in history. And that's a second choice would be to be on historic preservation. And I know they have a lot of people applying for Arts Commission. And then there's a second person, I don't know his background. He gave a really long list of all kinds of commissions he'd be interested in, including ones that he doesn't qualify for completely. So I know historic preservation was on that list too. But if you know of anyone else, send them my way or send them to the website. The application's online.
Mara, I just wanted to say that I think that the work with the dual family resident duplexes, I think that really is the future when it comes to keeping the diversity in the housing in Webster Groves, because a 900 square foot house that has mold is probably not going to be, you know, a viable option. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. We agree that when the houses have been left to such poor condition, it's not going to be helpful. But as we are losing, and we have in the PowerPoints for Plan Commission, we're essentially every house that we're losing is being replaced with a house that's almost 3 times the size. So what that means is we no longer have the ability for either someone to stay here in Webster once they've raised their family and want to move to something smaller. It also means that new families might not have the opportunity to come in. You know, I don't like using the word starter home, but it's still smaller sized homes for smaller families are now not available. And that changes, I think, a lot of the types of people who we, you know, I think it's the reason why many of us moved here is the diversity of the streets, the houses, the architecture, the overall community, and the walkability. And I think those are important things that we're trying to focus on.
How is that working though? Because I feel like a lot of those properties are being targeted by builders.
So what we're doing is a couple things. One, by making them go through the process to apply to you all if they're over 50 years old is one thing. We're changing the categories so that they can't just automatically be able to, no matter what size the lot is, they're no longer going to potentially be able to build like a 2,800 square foot house, even if the lot is undersized. So a lot of the lots that are selling are undersized lots because they can get them for less money, but they're still being guaranteed to be able to build a 2,800 square foot house. We're looking at changing the floor area ratio to actually tie into the lot and not give a guarantee anymore. So now you would maybe on smaller lots only be able to get a 1,700 square foot house or a 1,400 square foot house. And it will also help with, right now the new houses are towering over the smaller homes. And so that's going to provide some of the opportunities that would not make it so inviting to purchase some of these homes.
Interesting.
And again,
definitely something, yeah.
Still in debate, still having public hearings. So we're inviting people to please come listen to the hearings, or if you want to see it after the fact, we have been sending PowerPoints out and sharing the packets. The packets are online with all of our backup.
That's good to know. Well, I guess I will motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brendan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
Good to
Have a
see you
great
all
week.
faces.
You too. Everybody
Bye. Good to
stay
see
safe.
everyone.
Stay healthy.
Aye.